Hello all. The sustainability issue that I chose to speak about for this final video project is climate change. And I specifically wanted to pertain to the issues of climate change that affect animals and the animal kingdom. Climate change is very destructive and can have multiple effects on wildlife. This can include habitat loss, ocean acidification, extinction, life changes, disease, animal to human conflicts, disasters, and more. Climate change can create habitat loss problems due to higher temperatures. These higher temperatures can result in the loss of vegetation and food, as well as the evaporation of water levels, which can be detrimental to not only the basic survival of various animal species, but also the survival of the species that are native to various water sources. Extinction can also occur due to the change in temperature, that some animals thrive at a certain temperature. So whether it gets colder or warmer, that can be very detrimental to their health. For example, polar bears is something we've been seeing a lot of in the news and various local sources, that the snow and ice is starting to melt rapidly in the Arctic, which in turn can affect polar bears and various Arctic species in a number of ways, including hunting their prey, metabolism rates, and even disease or death. Human and animal conflict can also happen. This can be because if more and more habitats are lost or land is used for businesses or business ventures that were previously used for plants and animals, then there will be more conflict over space between the humans and the wildlife because they're trying to relocate. And finally, natural disasters are more and more common due to the climate change and the varying temperatures. This in turn can cause hurricanes, tsunamis, droughts, heat waves, and even wildfires. Now I will share my screen and we can get into my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so as I stated, my topic for this final project is climate change and its effect on animals. So some issues that are brought up by climate change, and specifically in the animal kingdom that we're going to be talking about today, is destroying and degrading habitats and natural disasters, disruption of food sources and acidification of oceans, extinction and life changes, and increased disease rates and increased methane emissions. So this slide shows various pictures of ways climate change affects animals. This is including the ocean acidification effects that you will see in the bleaching of coral in the top left. This will also show the detrimental effects of rising temperatures and melting ice, which we see in the two pictures on the right of the extremely skinny polar bear due to the lack of food and metabolism rates in the change of temperatures, and the penguins. And then this also shows the changes in migration patterns that we will see not only through the ducks and the birds, but also the turtle hatchlings. So first we're going to be focusing on the destruction of habitats. So in terms of focusing on the destruction of habitats caused by climate change, we must consider extreme weather, droughts and heat waves, and melting ice. So first, these disasters can risk nesting sites and habitat loss. On the topic of extreme weather, this can include storms, tsunamis, and wildfires. Storms such as tornadoes can rip through ecosystems and cause detrimental outcomes. This can include downed trees, destruction of dams, and destruction of nesting sites. Wildfires, on the other hand, can rapidly destroy whole ecosystems or kill anything and everything in their path, including any live organisms. Now, on the topic of droughts and heat waves, this can limit food and water sources needed for basic survival. This can include the burning of plants, changing of temperatures, which in turn can lead to the killing off of species that are used for food and drying up water sources or causing severe evaporation of water. This poses a risk for basic hydration, yet also a risk to the species that are native to various water sources. According to the U.S. National Park Service, one of the main factors that affects the natural survival rates of animals in their parks is rising temperatures, which means when the species environment changes, so does their survival rate. Now, on the topic of melting ice, this is due to higher temperatures, which the snow and the ice will melt in the Arctic regions. This, in turn, causes great distress and problems to Arctic species such as polar bears, walruses, and seals. Now, as shown in the graphic on the right-hand side of the page, between 2001 and 2018, roughly 50% of the polar bear population was lost due to changing temperatures and melting ice. The Arctic is also warming 2 times faster than anywhere else on the planet. Now we will be focusing on the disruption of food sources. In terms of focusing on the disruption of food sources caused by climate change and its specific effects on animals, we must consider ocean acidification and the actual disruption of the food sources. As shown in the graphic on the right-hand side, ocean acidification occurs due to the increase in CO2 absorbed through the atmosphere, which leads to heat trapped underneath the water's surface. This can risk the lives of species including fish, plankton, shells, coral, and more. This leads into the topic of the disruption of food sources. Increasing temperatures in the atmosphere and the oceans pose risks for species that are used for food and that are seeking out food. This also leads to the loss of plants and insects that either eat or rely on plants used for food by various species. Now we'll be focusing on extinction and life changes. In terms of focusing on the extinction rates and life changes that are caused by climate change and its specific effects on animals, we must consider migration patterns and stress rates. In terms of migration, as food sources continue to disappear and droughts and heat waves continue to get more persistent, animals will resort to changing their migration patterns. This may to be to look for desired food or more desirable environmental conditions. Related to that topic, the University of Connecticut recently did a study where its scientists analyzed 30 years of biodiversity, which include 450 species. They found that nearly 1 in 50 species worldwide, which is an estimated 180,000 species, will be at risk for extinction by the year 2100. Now, in terms of stress rates, as temperatures rise, so do stress levels in animals. Stress can in turn cause death, disease, hunting problems, weakness, and reproduction issues, to name a few. Now, scientists at Oxford University found that if a species was exposed to a temperature change of 7 degrees Celsius or more, they were at a greater risk for extinction. They also found that species that could only live in a narrow range of temperatures and species with larger geographic ranges were at greater risk of extinction. Also related, the University of Connecticut did a study where they found that if a temperature rises over 1.5 degrees Celsius, extinction rates will rapidly increase. The Earth has already warmed roughly 1.8 degrees Celsius since the Industrial Revolution, and it is not stopping anytime soon. Now we'll be focusing on increased disease rates. In terms of focusing on the increased disease rates caused by climate change and its specific effects on animals, we must consider both the increased disease rates and the increased methane emissions. In terms of focusing on increased disease rates, such as temperatures continue to increase, conditions become more ideal for parasites, bacteria, and pathogens. This can lead to death, stress, lethargy, etc. Also relating back to migration changes, if animals continue to migrate to new unfamiliar areas to seek out more preferable environmental conditions, they could be exposing themselves to various parasites and diseases. These diseases can be caused by ingesting something or by a host species, such as fleas or ticks. Now, in terms of focusing on the increase in methane emissions, this can disrupt and change digestion. Heat can affect the acids in animals' bodies, which in turn will make digestion far more difficult. For example, cows. Cows' anaerobic fermentation, which is essentially burping when eating, and the decomposition of manure leads to an increase in the methane emissions. Digestion can also be affected due to the change in food availability. If a certain species is not eating something or not used to eating something, or is eating something to simply survive, their bodies may not be equipped to digest it properly. This can also lead to stress-related health concerns. Now, these next two pages will be my resources. So I use various different resources, including the U.S. Department of Wildlife, the U.S. Park Service, Connecticut University, Oxford University, and also U.S. Fisheries and the Wildlife Services. So, in conclusion, climate change is an incredibly serious issue, one that affects the environment, animals, extinction rates, biodiversity, ocean acidification, migration patterns, and much more. Climate change is very destructive and can have multiple impacts on wildlife, including habitat loss, extinction, ocean acidification, changes in migration patterns, increase in diseases, natural disasters, and more, as we spoke about today. These impacts can be incredibly detrimental to various animal species, which can lead to the extinction that is rapidly increasing in our world today. The fate of countless species hangs in the balance as this crisis continues to persist in climate change, and the clock is ticking. Thank you.